this time around. All right, so it's been quite a minute. I know this is probably, if I were to listen back to past episodes, it would sound like that every single time. Like, it's been a minute. Oh, it's been a long time. It's, we haven't really posted in a while. I think what people who may be listening may understand or not understand, it's just there's a little bit of, a rough time going on for, someone like me, Syrian Palestinian American who, has family overseas, and there's just a lot going on with the media, social media, how people are handling information and news. And I think I was more or less on the edge of my seat trying to just like live life, but also stay aware of what was going on. But just trying to like really personalize a lot of those things in a way that can help me, I guess, refrain from just jumping onto a podcast and saying things that may either come off biased or just hyper emotional. Even if I, know in my heart of hearts I'm fighting the good fight, I know it's right. I think just to preserve a little bit more of a rational approach to the things I'm saying, I needed time away from the podcast while all this was going on. However, the elections and the voting just, was this past Tuesday, and, now it's Wednesday evening, and we've gotten the results. Trump has won the election. He is indeed our new
by a landslide for the most part. Like, you really, I don't know if that's really what it would be classified or where that threshold is, but definitely won more than what people are expecting them to, and I think it shocked a lot of people on both sides of the aisle.
So many people, I think, saw this coming in terms of just how, Biden's presidency has been the last 4 years. A lot of people knew that he just wasn't qualified or was, capable of performing the most important role in this country and, even in the world, because we are the most powerful, most influential country. So, I definitely saw this coming. I know a lot of people have, and I know that a lot of the Democrats, were fighting the delusional fight where they really were just trying to put Biden on this pedestal of, this is the leader of the free world and he is capable, all because the opposition was Trump. And I just want to make myself clear, I am not a Democrat, I am not a Republican, I am not a liberal, I'm not a progressive, I'm not any of these labels. I really find myself just to be an American who wants to compromise and work together for the best ideas with my fellow Americans to, have this, like, I guess, like, system that works, and it doesn't work right now. I think the system is this bipartisan system has caused such a, divisive nature within politics, just because we see that it's about winning at all costs and not necessarily listening to policies or overall changes that would benefit the majority of Americans.
They're almost like kind of
fear-mongering.
That as well. They kind of say it's turned into a fight, as in the other side does this, so you better watch out. But that's not really the point I was going to make. It was more of like they got hung up over the entitlement of it, or the more of red versus blue, like it's like almost like idolization. I would say that both sides are the same way, as in
there's like a radical left, there's a radical right, and then there's people on the outskirts of these parties that are just like, hey,
correct. But I think that middle ground there is it's getting larger and larger, and it's just a small group of elites on both sides of the piece of it that I think is controlling it in some aspects. Because I would say more Americans would agree on some common policies than not. Especially if you think of immigration, I would say majority of Americans would say we don't really care if people immigrate here. We just want to make sure that they are going through the process, and whatever that process is, and make sure that people are safe. No criminals, drug lords, things like that coming through. No one's opposed of immigration in my mind, and I would say that's where both sides of the aisle would say yes, that's what we should do. But neither one of them does it. Like, it's almost like blaming the other people, and that's all we're doing. It's finger pointing.
It's the fear mongering of the opposition. Whether each side is the one spewing that fear mongering, it's like, you have a policy, you have something you're offering to the American people, and I get how debates work, I get how elections work, I get how when you're supposed to debate someone, you're essentially trying to show everyone that your opponent is incapable of the position. However, there is this form of debating that comes in the form of fear-mongering that allows people to feel like the only reason why they should vote for for the side that's apparently representing them is because the other side is so scary and what it could potentially do to, for the future of this country and America. And it's like, we have to understand, if we are debating in ways that are allowing the lesser of two evils and this constant narrative of this person's so bad, if this is like a way that we're using, a method that we're using to win, what does that say then when we do get that opposition of evil, or the opposition that is evil being into the presidency? What is that doing for Americans? At least like, the millions that voted for the opposition, like, because essentially that evil then is what's gonna put Americans into a state of mind like, we are not secure in this country, we are divided, we hate our president, I hate my neighbor, I hate my family members, anyone who supported this person to get them into office. What are we doing here? This is blatant, like, mass psychosis that is being created by this elite class, whether they're on the left or right, because the ultimate way to have these divisions is to scare us, and when we're scared and we're divided, we have all these different policies and bills being passed, against our awareness, and honestly even our will, because so many people would rather feel scared and rather give into this divisive system than say, hey, listen, this is our next president. We just have to do our best to be united and hold our president accountable for whatever they may or may not do that is benefiting or not benefiting. We just gotta we gotta just be aware of things. We just gotta stay on our toes and make sure that we're doing our part as Americans to be kind to each other, pass the love of and unity of being an American. But if we listen to too much of this fear mongering and we allow the radicals of the left or the right to dictate our comfort or our ability to function in a society like American society, then the elites win, and both of them get to laugh, even though one may not win presidency. They're still elites. They're still part of the same circle. They're still part of the same evil system. We should not feel their fear that they're shoving down our faces, our throats. We should be standing united and saying, what, this was our president in 2016 to 2020. We understood, or 2021, I think, whatever. We had this last time. Yes, a lot of people didn't like it. Maybe most people at the time didn't like it. But we had him as a president, and we survived, and we made it as a country still. Now we have the next 4 years with him, and it's going to be fine. This toxic culture of having to unfollow and come at people and try to cancel them and say vicious things, all because you've been told by the opposition or by the side you choose, you're the problem. You're spewing hatred. You're doing the same thing that you're accusing others of doing, because now you're essentially not even open-minded to understand why maybe some people have voted for something that just they align with. Maybe they don't like Trump as an individual. Maybe they don't want him as a president, but they understood that this person at least offers more of what they align with. Now, do I think Trump or Kamala aligns with anything that I support? Absolutely not. None of it. So for someone like me, there's a moment of entertainment I get to witness when I see everyone like combating each other and crying these tears and being hypocritical to the highest degrees, and I'm just sitting here like, listen, my vote didn't affect this outcome. I voted for Jill Stein. She didn't even get, a full percentage of the American vote. She got 0.4% of the American vote. And even if third-party voters voted for Kamala, she still would not have won. And yet we have this blame of the Democratic side. Like, everyone is to blame except our own party.
I would definitely say that, the Democrats lost for their own reason, their own fault, because all they did was just tell everyone why Donald Trump is the reason why he can't get elected. And they focused all on that and not necessarily, in my mind, like actual policies. Like, they talked about immigration, but they didn't necessarily talk about, okay, what are you going to do with it? And maybe they did, and I kind of missed those pieces. So I can't say that 100% with confidence, but from the clips I heard, and the speeches I've watched of Kamala, it was more of just talking about, oh, we're going to do this, but it's not specifics. You know what I mean? Like, I think the American people kind of wanted to see, what are you going to do different than Biden versus just keeping the status quo.
She with Biden, and that she's like, I'm with Biden,
and she's
I
completely different.
Change anything, and blah blah blah. It's like you lost the election when you got Dick Cheney, like one of the worst war criminals of our time,
Liz Cheney.
Well, Liz Cheney
Her-
and obviously
her dad.
her dad rather, but the family itself basically wanted her to win and supported her, and this family is, in my opinion, like needs to be shamed out of any position of power completely. I mean, like shut the fuck up, honestly. But on that front, you had them basically endorse you. You had Bill Clinton, in Michigan saying, hey, like, I know that, things are bad overseas, but your family deserves to die because it's Israel's home. Like, I'm sorry that you guys, are upset, but, like, you all deserve to die. Your family deserves to die. Like, it doesn't matter. We got to support Israel and best of wishes.
That definitely was a major blow for her.
And what people don't understand, too, is that, like, the economy was fucking horrible. Horrible. Inflation was terrible. We had been sending billions overseas. There was, natural disasters that took, or devastated so many Americans and, destroyed their lives. And, we're being told, like, oh, let's send billions more to Israel and billions more to Ukraine. And there's Americans being like, what the fuck? Change your foreign policy. Offer a change to your foreign policy because this can't continue like this. A genocide and funding wars can't continue like this because it's hurting the American people at large. And when Kamala says that she would do nothing differently from Biden, aka having an unequivocal and unwavering support for the Zionist regime, what does that say? You're compromising Americans, well-being over Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that despite Trump being just as bad on foreign policy and just as, bad with supporting Israel unequivocally, I think what people see is that this candidate is doing nothing right now, and at least we know if they're both kiss asses of Israel, at least one may do better for the economy, one may, help certain things that Americans feel, that are the most important, like border control, the economy, the inflation. And this is not to endorse Trump or to say Trump is doing better things. Like, I don't like the fuck. I don't like him or Kamala. They're, to me, equal evils. Like, yeah. I don't believe in lesser of two evils. I think if you're evil, you're evil. And that's not a way I want to vote. And I would never feel in good conscience voting for an evil. So this toxicity online, though may, be entertaining to some degree, it's also quite heartbreaking to see how many people, every election cycle or in between, especially since Trump has been a figure in politics, it's just so sad to see how the system has programmed them to be these, divisive, like beacons on social media and yet again further fear-monger people to not be able to express their opinions and fear of being canceled or isolated or shamed or doxxed or whatever the fuck it may be. I just have to say, I think the Dems had it coming. I think that they failed. I think they need to focus inwardly and understand why they lost and just learn, hopefully, for the next cycle. If you guys don't want to, unequivocally support a candidate who's unequivocally supporting of war and genocide and essentially foregoing the safety and the well-being of Americans here, sorry, that's what your party was about. Democrats weren't doing quite anything different, really, to what MAGA was doing. In fact, I call them Blue MAGA. This administration is essentially Blue MAGA, and to say otherwise is to be completely delusional.
Yeah, it's the. Sorry, I'm blanking. It's just interesting in my mind just how confident the Democrats were, but they were, in my mind, not telling us anything different than what the current status quo is. Not, like your point to, their stance on Israel and, the genocide not changing on or the status quo where they're going.
Reason why she lost. I think that's actually like the number one reason why she lost.
Well, the same thing with the economy. It's like you can't continue down saying that, Bidenomics is continuing to work because it's not working. You can't continue to back that to say it's working when most people feels that it's not working. So that was, in my mind, another shot on the foot. And same thing with, immigration. You can't say that what's going on or what they're doing now is working, or even what they're going to do, even for that, because they could do it now to fix the problems. So a lot of it is that they're claiming all these things that they're going to do, but at the same time she's saying she's going to follow Biden in his footsteps. Okay, if that's the case, then he could be doing these things now. So it's kind of like
she got nominated,
she's caught up into her own little lies.
When Biden gave her the baton, I guess, to say, hey, excuse me, I'm incapable, because obviously I was incapable from the start, but I'm even more incapable now. Here, take over. you're the next one to essentially run in my place. I think a lot of people were hopeful that she would just come out and say something very like fair and not necessarily ditching Israel because we get it, everyone serves Israel in the U.S., but rather be offering more of a peace, like being a peace candidate, being like someone who's like, listen, we'll support Israel unequivocally. October 7th shouldn't have happened. The hostages need to come home. Blah blah blah. All those stupid talking points because obviously, as if Israel or Netanyahu even wants any of those things, he doesn't. But she would have said something like, but the war is going to end and I'm going to make sure that we do an arms embargo because we have to show Israel, our ally, that to be our ally, we have to follow international law, we have to follow our own laws, and this is not right. We are not condemning the Israeli people or the Jewish community. We are condemning this leader who is leading Israel to a very dark place. Like, she could have said all of these things that would have unified probably the entire world to see that this candidate is coming off in the most fair way possible. And instead, she
definitely had the chances.
Of Israel, and everyone was disappointed. People were like begging her at her rallies to just give someone from the Palestinian community or Arab community or Muslim community a voice, someone being able to speak. And we saw that was not even possible. And in fact, like there was an Arab representative or a government official or whatever who wanted to go to one of her rallies and was removed, and he didn't even know why, and he wasn't told why. So she was doing everything in her power, essentially, to,
not
show
listen
Israel her support, that it isolated so many of her, people who would have essentially voted for her because the opposition was Trump and or because they may have just said, you know what, she's still better than him and that's something I can vote for in good conscience. She was not better than Trump for the time that she was around.
Well, I think that...
And neither was Biden, and I think that's where a lot of the uncommitted voters and a lot of the Democrats, or I wouldn't say a lot of Democrats, but a lot of the, borderline Democrats, not really sure because they don't like Biden and they don't like Trump, a lot of those people went and voted Trump, or they voted Jill Stein, but mostly Trump. And I say that because if we saw the percentage of what Jill Stein's votes were, and it was 0.4%, nothing that people that are shaming me or shaming people online for voting third party and blaming minorities or whatever it is, no, even if every single third party voter or undecided voter that eventually voted third party who would have voted for Kamala, and if we did vote for Kamala, she still wouldn't have won. That's how big the margins were for people supporting Trump. That is on the Democratic Party's own accord. That's their own fault. That's
their
choices.
Own
problem. That is your fault. Blame yourselves. Now, I appreciate the whole offering of power, and the speech Kamala gave, like, oh, we have to give over the power and we'll do it, in the way that we're doing it. It's going to be peaceful, blah, blah. And everyone was clapping and cheering because at least we're not, like, the radical right that was, staging insurrection. And,
yeah.
I get that aspect.
She had all the chances in the world, I think, to truly beat Donald Trump. But all she did was say, oh, we're just going to do things with dignity and respect. And she thought that with Donald Trump's, past over the last 4 years, being convicted of, like, multiple felony accounts and everything else that were just kind of, she was thinking probably just all these other nails in the coffin, that she didn't have to try so hard.
No, I think she wanted to lose. I actually believe in my heart of hearts.
I honestly think that the Democrats thought that they had no chance of losing.
I think she knew she was going to lose. I think her administration, Biden administration, I think they knew they were going to lose. But I think that they were giving false hope to the Democrats because essentially because I don't think she tried. I don't think
she tried because she thought she had it like made. It was just easy scaling or easy sailing at that point.
I think if Obama was in her position, and I think if the roles if Obama ended up being like the person he was then now, and he was the one that was being elected or whatever, I think him, even though I don't like him and I don't think he's an actual piece of shit as well, dropping the most amount of bombs in the Middle East at the time he was president, I think he would have at least came off more fair and said something that was more balanced in the middle of, dignity and respect and, self-determination for Palestinians, and he probably would have said something that was a lot more reassuring for a hopeful future in stopping this, even if he wasn't being real or sincere. His ability to at least promise those things would have resonated with a lot more of the Democrats or undecided voters versus Kamala, who basically at every single turn or every single interview or every single, public appearance, when she was asked about Gaza and the foreign policy, she was just reiterating how much she supports Israel and what happened to them was the worst thing ever on October 7th. And that's all you're saying. And then you get people to endorse further war, further genocide, and further justifying what's happening overseas. And if you have all of that and you can't think for a second how that may rub so many Americans the wrong way, because even if people don't give a fuck about Palestine or Israel, they still hate that their money's going to this entity that's essentially robbing Americans and putting them in a worse situation. So on so many different fronts, people were frustrated with the Biden administration and with the Democratic Party.
Well, it should be interesting over the next 4 years as Trump gains office and what the Democrats do next. In my mind is now is their chance to sit there and rebuild, or are they going to continue down the path of just attacking Donald Trump and blaming him for everything? And they have to move away from the blame game and truly reestablish who the hell they are.
I think shift.
And the other piece of it is with the next term coming in January, you have a lot of old senators disappearing, like Mitch McConnell's retiring and Nancy Pelosi's retiring, I believe. So you're going to see a good shift of power. I don't know if that's happened yet, but I know it is insane.
But we still got a lot of bad screws to.
I'm saying there's a lot of change over the next 4 years. With the Senate being flipped over to Republican control. The House is, I think, right now still undecided. So it's like you're going to see the next 4 years be a dramatic shift from where we're at today, for better or worse. I don't really know what all is going to happen.
I'm not scared. I think we're going to make it.
I'm not scared either, but it's just more of there will be change.
I think that no matter what happens, no matter what candidate would have won, it would have been bad for Palestinian, Syrian American like me, and for the Arab community at large, the Aramean, which is part of my also community, like what I really actually am is Aramean, not Armenian, Aramean. And regardless, even as a part of the small Christian communities that are left within the Middle East, like it's bad for us as well, because again, essentially this Zionist regime wants to erase us while blanket statement saying that the entire Middle Eastern countries that surround them are all radical Muslim countries and radical Muslim societies that need to be obliterated, and don't even take into consideration that there's millions of Christians still there that are being bombed under the guise of dehumanization through Islamophobia and actual anti-Semitism, which again Middle Easterns are Semitic because they're Semites. It's really not that hard. I know Israel coined that anti-Semite thing, and that's the ultimate get out of jail card. But us, Middle Easterns, know the truth, and we have been advocating and fighting for our lives, especially in this country, for decades, and we've been silenced and our deaths have been hidden, for too long now. And I believe that it didn't matter who won, on whether it was the Democratic side or Republican side, they're unequivocally supportive of Israel. And I think what now we can do is we can organize, I think, more efficiently, because this big bad wolf is Trump, and I think it's a lot easier now to hold him accountable if his policies become more radicalized on Israel, as in like giving more support and doing things like what Miriam Adelson did, which was give him $100 million to annex the West Bank. And if he holds true to that promise, that's actually provoking war. I mean, it's war. It's the declaration of war and genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so he can't then run on like, I was the anti-war president, because also he wanted to not nuke or bomb Iran's nuclear sites. So I don't really see this anti-war candidate, but okay. But what I went to say is that I think a lot more people will organize because it's easier to rally against Trump. So if on that front, like, I guess good for that. And maybe we'll see a lot more Democrats now then hold the leader funding the genocide more accountable, because it's not Kamala and it's not during elections. So there's positive things about Trump winning to some degree, but then there's also the percentage of me that thinks, or side of me that thinks, there's so many words going through my head a million miles per hour because this shit is heavy, but there's a part of me that thinks the Democratic Party will continue this blame game and never truly organize in a way to actually win on a moral, on the good merit, right? Like, yeah. I don't think the Democratic Party, unless they look inwardly, unless they try to see why they lost and truly understand why they lost, I don't think there's ever a saving grace for this party ever to truly succeed.
Well, I mean, you also they can't necessarily sit there and say like they have in the past of, but we've won the popular vote. They lost. Correct, and so in my mind they have to look at that. They can't use that as an excuse, as in where Hillary Clinton lost, but she won the popular vote by millions. It's now on the opposite side. Where how do you explain that? You have millions of people that said no against you, and in an account of all the independents that were voted for, and including Jill Stein. Like, you have all those people that they have to look at that, and if they don't, then that's their own demise in my mind, and their
The
own
Democrats
downfall.
deserved what happened to them because they failed so many Americans that were anti-war, anti-genocide, wanted an arms embargo on Israel, wanted a ceasefire, wanted, aid from the
I think
from the hurricanes. They wanted their president to care more about them. People want the inflation to stop, and they want just the economy to be better. They wanted so many things that the Democratic Party essentially just completely ignored and ran solely on the fact that Trump is bad, 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 bad. And we need to support the Democratic Party at all costs, even if there's an act of genocide we're funding because Trump's so bad, bad, bad. And at this point, like I said, as someone who has my heritage and as an American who is first generation, I completely look at what's happening on both sides as from such a perspective of just like, wow, they don't even realize how programmed they are to be this divisive, and I think that's their own downfall. You became radicalized because of Trump. You fed into the fear because of Trump, and running with that, the Democratic side saying how bad Trump was, and that's the, listen, I'm getting overwhelmed by my thoughts just because I think sometimes when I say things out loud, I think like how moronic, how.
It's almost like the realization, like
how is this the way? How is this truly the way that things have gone? So much so that we're fighting each other within our own country. Like, we're essentially in a digital civil war.
Of course we are, and I think what's happened is, from my side of it, is like you had Donald Trump that sat there and went after Hillary nonstop. So then all of a sudden it turns around, and then I think now the Democrats went after Donald Trump, and then what happened is both parties evolved into truly attacking each other and more focused on that. And what that did is basically gave the fighting and the blessing and in the extremism of it, like, permission to the rest of the the country to behave that way.
We're following our leaders. We're following our supposed leaders. Like, we're behaving like them.
It's like it's not like how
and I don't
10
say we like me. I mean like.
Like 10, 15, 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, when you had a presidential debate, that they actually debated the policy. Now, they might bring up a previous administration and maybe in their mind of why it was a mistake. But I think they were more focused on a lot of policy, more pieces versus the individual. And now it's almost turned into very just an individual person and not a policy-driven piece. That's my reflection of it.
It does not excuse, when I talk like this, it does not excuse the crimes I think Trump has committed. I believe he is a felon. I think that he is definitely guilty of what he was convicted of. I mean, he was proven that he was guilty.
By a judicial court. And in my mind is no one can dispute that. If you believe in the system at all, you have to believe in that that the jury was there and the jury's made the opinion the way that it is. Like, the entire world isn't corrupt in my mind.
I think if we organized, if the Democratic Party organized and said,
they need to forget about Trump.
We need to offer the policies and the promises to the American people that would most unify the American people, and we went on that and said, Trump is Trump, we already know this, we've already seen this, let's just not focus on him as a person, let's just be real with ourselves here, like, this is the policies that we're offering, these are the promises we're offering, this is ultimately is going to help the most, the majority of Americans. Let's unite together. And if you kept using rhetoric that sounded more unifying, and again, like, change your policy on Israel, said something that was more middling, peaceful, whatever the fuck, she would have won by the landslide, not Trump. But we focus so much on him,
especially at the end of it. I'd say at the beginning of even Biden's campaign in Harris in August, there is that it was very not focused on him. It was the last 3 months where all of a sudden they turned their playbook, in my mind, and became a very like aggressor towards him. And I really think that was some of their downfall, is that they switched from talking about policy and more focused on why they need to vote Democratic because you can't deal with another Trump. That's all they focused on in
and
the
I know
end.
we're repeating ourselves here in some ways, but I think we're just trying to offer the listeners or any listeners that there's multiple fronts as to why the Democratic Party lost, and you can argue and debate which one was the worst cause of the downfall or the loss of faith in the Democratic Party. But I think they're all intertwined in a sense, right? So I think we got Trump. I didn't want him to win. I didn't want Kamala to win, obviously, but it wasn't up to me. It was up to the people that were going to vote for either side. And what I'm trying to say is I can survive another Trump presidency. I can. I'm not radicalized. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to feed into the fear. I'm going to respect, my country overall because I want to live in a country that is functional and that is united. And if it means that there's some evils committed by the current president that, maybe some people are okay with because it doesn't pertain or affect them, so they think, then I know that we're still going to make it through. I know that we're still going to survive. I believe in God, I believe in His will, and I believe in truth and justice will always prevail. Respect your neighbor, respect your family members, try to offer love, lead by example. Don't fear-monger people the way that our supposed leaders are fear-mongering. Be the change you wish to see, as cliche as it sounds, because otherwise then you are just a blatant hypocrite and you will lose credibility in any form because you are becoming the very thing you hate. And I'm saying this mainly to the Democratic Party and to a lot of the Democrats out there on social media that are posting so radically and so hateful and making people afraid. Like, I'm gonna unfollow you if you have voted this way, unfriend me. This and there's so much of this in variations that it just it's kind of entertaining because it's like, dude, really, but also like sad. It's very sad. So my brain and my thought processes are like everywhere right now.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of reminding myself why I needed to take a step back. But this is such an important issue.
I definitely don't.
Podcast, it needed to be expressed on the podcast because it's reminding me why I started this to begin with. It's to bring unity and offer perspectives and try to, go against cancel culture and rather have open dialogue so that we can ultimately achieve the best outcome for the majority of people. That's really all it is.
Well said. It's exactly the reason why we're here is to, talk about the issues, not to argue through the issues and be, not decisive, but combative, towards people and those type of things. So I think that's the reminder for everyone here as we, kind of wrap up this little long-winded.
Because I know my buys are always long. Doesn't mean that you can't be passionate on an issue. Does not mean that you can't get frustrated. Does not mean that you can't get angry and vent and be a human being. You have a
Of course
right
not.
to do that. You just can't cross certain lines. And I say when you can't cross certain lines, it's you can't attack someone that may be willing to listen to you and hear your perspective and that may plant a seed.
You want to keep your character and you want to keep your integrity throughout the process of arguing or debating and those type of
and some
things.
people
I
are
think
just
is what you're saying.
disruptors.
Yeah.
Some people are just disruptors and they know no matter what you say or think or express that they're just going to completely shut you out. And when you're able to identify those types of people, just save your energy, save your breath, and don't combat them. I've learned to just not go off on Zionists as much as I used to, just because I know that they're disruptors and they're infiltrators and they're just meant to cause a distraction and anger. So for me, I've learned, you know what? There are people that will show they're crazy and let them show they're crazy. You don't even have to do it. The universe will do it for you. So to wrap it up, I'm grateful for this podcast. I know I have to be more consistent, but now that the election has happened and now we'll be having a new president, I think a lot of the hype and the just like exhaustion that goes around such a serious thing like an election can kind of die down a bit, and we can focus more on other issues like the genocide that's ongoing, and I can express that more without having to feel like I'm on the edge of my seat about what's going to happen. Because every major event is essentially when Israel uses that time to cause the most devastation to Gaza, Lebanon, and so on. So we will be recording more. We will be on more of these episodes discussing things. Just I'm trying to get better at saying goodbye, so bye.